Welcome to Washington in Focus. My name is Spencer Pauly. I'm the Western Washington reporter for the Center Square. With me is Tim Clauser, the Eastern Washington reporter for the Center Square. Now, Tim, we're here to talk about your latest story that you reported on here, and that's Spokane County bracing for a $20 million deficit in 2026. So hiring freezes and cutting vacancies. Looks like you got a lot on your plate here, Tim. Give me some details here.
Yeah, as I was covering leading into 2025, the county just closed a deficit or a budget shortfall last year, somewhere in between the realm of 10 to $20 million. Now, just into the new year, they're sitting in the same situation. Now, they have a new finance official, Jeff McMorris. He's the brother of former U.S. Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers, who represented the region before. Um, he attributed the situation to the sort of the drying up of federal relief funds. Throughout COVID, in the time after, Spokane County, the city of Spokane, the state counties all around the state were receiving this federal relief to help their economies, but now that's drying up. But he also pointed to the overarching situation as a whole. As you're aware, Governor Bob Ferguson is attempting to balance a multi-billion-dollar deficit within the state legislature. And Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency is slashing federal spending as well. And those both have trickle-down effects on local spending, the private sector. And he said this is just feeding into the overall budget situation.
Yeah, right. So Ferguson just pulling a Doge here along with Elon Musk, and this is trickling down to Spokane, as you say. Now, can you give me some numbers on maybe some of the revenue? What are we looking at with revenue in Spokane versus expenditures creating this gap?
Yeah, so like I said before, I mean, next year they're looking at a $20 million gap between revenues and expenditures. So I believe their revenues are supposed to actually dip next year down to, I believe, 200 and I think it's $62 million. Now that's general fund revenue. They're currently at 264 for this year, so a $2 million drop as spending goes up from 264 million in general fund spending to 282. So they need to close that gap before it becomes pretty unsustainable over the next few years. I mean, under this projection that they have by 2030, that gap would be $70 million. So they need to address this now. Now they're looking at a few things. Revenue, they're not expecting that to grow more than 2% as a whole next year. But in terms of sales tax growth, which is their biggest source of revenue, they're planning for zero growth. That's after budgeting 1% this year, 2% last year. They were only able to get a little bit more than 1.1% last year. So they adjusted for this year. Next year, they're saying it could be even worse. So they're going 0 and then to 1% and then a little bit more each year after that.
So we're looking at maybe cuts to staffing, or what are the options that are on the table right now, Tim?
Yeah, salaries and benefits actually make up 69% of the county's budget. That's a huge portion. So when they're looking at cuts, it's the first thing they're looking at. But there's ways to do this without taking people's jobs away. There's actually over 100 vacancies currently in the county system that they're funding. So by eliminating those 100 to 110 vacancies alone, they could save $10 million, cut that deficit in half, which would be a great step. Now, McMorris suggested this to the Board of County Commissioners earlier this week, and also suggested other things like a hiring freeze this time. He looked at those jobs and said, some of these might be needed and we can adjust later, but some of these vacancies have sat unfilled for years, and there's just no point in keeping them funded in the system anymore.
Okay. Yeah, this reminds me of what city of Seattle dealt with last year during its budgeting process. I mean, Seattle began doing a hiring freeze and then also started cutting some of those vacant positions. And that saved for them to help close a budget gap that was over $100 million. I don't remember the exact number, but that was a big time budget deficit they were facing there. And it's going to continue. So to see that kind of be considered here is interesting, I believe, with Spokane. Now, I want to say you saying that there's $10 million left in budget deficit if that were to go through, that they would have to figure out ways to address, right?
Yeah, and there's a variety of ways they can do that through cuts to services. He suggested that the Board of County Commissioners look at all the services they're providing and start cutting the ones that aren't required by law. There's certain things that they're statutorily required to provide, such as detention services and a lot of things within that. But cutting where they can could save little bits of money, adding up to a larger chunk over time. But the plan is to meet monthly moving forward to stay on top of that sales tax. Because, from one period to the next, you might see returns lower than you're expecting, or in the holiday season, you might see much higher than you're expecting. So it's going to fluctuate. And he wants them to continue to prepare for the worst moving forward. He said this is a multi-year issue and not something that they're going to solve with just next year's budget. They're going to have to continue this moving forward.
Will they consider maybe a property tax?
That was actually one of the things that they kind of ruled out during their forecasting session earlier this week. Now, it's not out of the question completely. They did raise property taxes by the 1% statutorily allowed last year, but the forecast that they gave the other day, it does not include a 1% property tax levy. They said the goal here is to encourage people to reduce spending and to get by without inflating the budget or creating new taxes.
It's going to be a little tough for them, it seems like, here. The challenge facing Spokane, am I right?
It does sound like a challenge, but like I said, they just closed a deficit heading into 2025. The city of Spokane closed a similar one heading into 2025. Other counties and cities around the state are also grappling with the same. So it's definitely a predicament, but not unique to Spokane by any means.
No, I'm going back to something you touched on before, but potential cuts to services. You were saying they were non-essential services, right? Is that what you said? Cuts to...
Yeah, so non-statutorily required services.
Yeah.
So services that they're required to provide by law. So say you take detention services, which state law requires the county to provide. They have to house these inmates. But there's certain things that they are not required to provide to these inmates. Certain things like certain work programs, mental health, support, stuff like that. They could start making cuts, not just in detention services, but looking at each department, what they have to do and what they don't have to do.
Would this include, could I ask, would this include the police department? Are policing services maybe facing these cuts, or are they off the table? Do you know?
I think it's safe to say that we might see cuts across every department in some form or another, but it wouldn't be abnormal to say, we're going to make some cuts to the sheriff's department, but in 2026, the sheriff's department is ultimately going to have a larger budget. Usually we see that with public safety departments like fire, police, law enforcement in general. You see these budgets inflate, but it's likely that they do cut back in areas where they can, maybe in terms of supplies, overtime if they're able to. But other areas, they're not just they can't. I mean, they have to pay their deputies. They have to keep cruisers on the street. So the cuts might be more apparent to, say, non-public safety facing departments.
I'm sure you'll keep your eye on that one, Tim. What's next from here? You're saying they're going to meet monthly or every couple of months regarding this and keep track of the sales tax? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so every few months they do a sales tax review. They're going to keep that going monthly moving forward. And Jeff McMorris, he's going to be joining these sessions to just run them through what's happening with the budget, potential cuts, what actions they're taking now, what they should take, kind of just forecasting for the future. They're looking at this on like a 4 or 5 year spectrum rather than just next year. Because, every year you can pass a balanced budget, but if it doesn't really plan for the long term, you're going to end up in the same situation the following year, which is kind of like Spokane is in now, where they just passed a balanced budget, but spending isn't going to span out for this next year, so they're going to have to adjust.
All right, Tim. Well, I know you're going to keep your eye on this one. I'm looking forward to further stories on this. That'll be it for now. My name is Spencer Pauly. This is Washington Focus. See you next week.